All right. Thank you so much. Wow, what a room. So exciting to be here. Thank you to the Monty 2024 for having us. I'm really excited. I'm Kristen Jilks. I'm with EY. I run our quantum computing lab, and I'm here today with friends and colleagues. So Dr. Michael Biersuk from Q Control, and we have Ray Harishankar from IBM. He's an IBM fellow and runs the Quantum Safe program. So really exciting topic at hand. You know, the Monty 2024 has done a really great job of really plugging together quantum across the programming, and the essence of all of what you've been hearing around quantum has been, if you think generative AI is the big thing, wait for quantum. It is going to radically shift the way that we study problems, the way we go after net new business. And so we're really here to talk about two different things. One is we want to break a few myths with you. We only have 30 minutes, so we're going to use the time a little bit wisely. We're going to break a few myths, and then we're really going to talk to the investors in the room about what you care most about, which is, when is this happening? How do I make my money? And what's the market shifting and shaping like? So with that introduction, I thought maybe we would start with, you know, one of the myths, which is we're generations away from having a quantum computer. So why do we care? But that's a myth, right? We were talking today at a round table much about this topic. So maybe over to you, Mike.
Sure. So can I just ask, by a show of hands, is quantum a word where you know that the word exists and that's about it? Is that you? Now put up your hand if like you're a seasoned traveler and you've invested or you've analyzed the quantum market. Cool. So there's a good mix in the room.
50-50.
And it's about 50-50, which is fantastic to hear. It wouldn't have been like that just a couple of years ago. And the reason for that shift is that quantum computers actually exist. Now we think about them because they're so futuristic in the way we describe them. We use language that's counterintuitive. We talk about quantum strangeness and all this stuff. That builds a false perception that this is some far-off technology.
Everything that we do today.
But you can go online right after this panel discussion and you can run real algorithms on real quantum computers from a variety of vendors, including our friends at IBM. And then you can use software from companies like mine to actually solve useful problems and get useful answers. So there's truth that we have not yet achieved this thing called quantum advantage, where you can demonstrate that the quantum solution is the economically relevant choice, that you would choose it over the classical supercomputer or the AI infrastructure. But we're getting more and more confident that that is coming in just the next couple of years for business-driven use cases.
That's right. And we are seeing quantum utility today. So we're actually able to run these algorithms with both IBM and Q Control and real world business problems. So we did DNA sequencing recently all together, the three of us, and produced phenomenal results that we published. And
to add to that, Kristen, in addition to what Michael said, it's not just us geeks and quantum experts sitting here and saying, yeah, quantum's the way to go.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah. But it's also what we see as adoption from clients, right? When I say clients, I'm talking of clients across a variety of industries who have, over the past several years, started to build up teams, not just to learn what quantum computing is about and to begin applying it, but also begin to identify, have identified use cases that they believe will drive business value for them, and have started to develop algorithms and apply them to solve and see what the outcomes may be. Right? And this is happening in financial services, it's happening in chemistry, it's happening in the discovery of drugs. A number of industries are adopting it. That, to me, Kristen, also is a great point that underscores that, look, it's not a myth, it's real. It's happening, and it's here and now.
That's right. So all the action right now is in AI. And so we want to kind of talk about, well, why quantum? And you were just hitting on a few of it. And the why quantum is some of the use cases that we're able to put together. And one of the things that we were talking about is optimization. Optimization is in everything that we do. We optimize the way we got dressed this morning and got to the airport, and we optimize anything and everything. And it's not the sexiest topic in the world, but it's a $75 billion sexy topic, right? So if we can get better at it, why not? And quantum computers are being used today to solve some of those problems. But perhaps what else are we going to be getting good at really, really soon?
Well, having talked about the positives, I do want to do this fear and uncertainty and doubt, right? The fun factor. I do want to touch on that, and I'm sure Michael will balance me out with the positive side of things. Because I focus, as Kristen introduced me, she pointed to the fact that I run Quantum Safe within IBM. You may say, what is Quantum Safe? Essentially, let me take a minute to sort of give you some context and background. Cryptography is the ultimate line of defense for any enterprise. Why do I say that? Any digital communication that you undertake as an individual, as a consumer, as an enterprise, depends on cryptography that encrypts the messages that you send or encrypts the data that you store. Essentially, there are two types of cryptography. Symmetric cryptography, that is for data at rest. I'm simplifying this to get the point across. And asymmetric cryptography, which is for encrypting messages that are sent across the network. So your bank transaction, your healthcare records, your travel reservation, everything is encrypted. Now, one of the use cases of quantum computing, there are use cases where quantum does what classical does better, and you could argue that our optimization is one of those. There are cases where quantum solves a problem that cannot be solved by classical computer. And this factorization is one of those problems. What do I mean by factorization? If I gave you a number 65 and said, tell me the two numbers that you need to multiply to make up that 65, immediately you'll say 13 and 5, easy. But if I were to give you a 2048-bit 637-digit number and say, go figure, right? No classical computer on Earth, even the fastest supercomputer, can solve that in 1 million years, literally in 1 million years, right? Why do I say this? Quantum computer can solve this in a matter of hours. That's the problem that quantum solves that classical cannot. You may say, so what? The so what is this factorization, mathematics of factorization, is what is used in all of the asymmetric algorithms that we know of today. So all asymmetric encryption will be broken when a quantum computer of sufficient scale and maturity becomes available. So now back to your question, Christian, of what else is being done beyond optimization. This solving of factorization problem leading to the ultimate line of defense coming down is a critical scenario that we really need to come to terms with, right? Now, I can go on and on about this, but I'll just make one more point and yield to my friend here. And that point is, you may say, so when is that going to happen, right? Not us saying it, but many experts have predicted that early 2030s is when cryptography is likely to be broken by quantum computer. I'm not saying it'll be early 2030s before you get business value out of quantum computing. I'm specifically picking a use case of cryptography being broken, and that happening in the early 2030s. So every enterprise out there has to be thinking about, what do I need to do in order to deal with that before that day comes along? So let me pause there. So that's a long example of an additional, but yet in my view, very important use case quantum drives to the table.
Thank you for that.
I think I want to actually double down on this because it's more than just an important use case that sounds exciting. It is the use case that has built the field. It is the use case that has driven all of the government investment. And frankly, it is the use case that will continue to drive the investment in the development of these machines. So we're in this fortuitous circumstance where for many years, the only way to develop a quantum algorithm was to take a sheet of paper and write it down. And really, the first thing that was written down was an algorithm that breaks codes, right? That was the first thing. And I used to be in the DoD, and I used to work as a contractor in the intelligence community, and we were investing all the way back to the early 2000s in asking the question of whether these machines could be built. That continues to this day. That will continue for decades to come. The fortuitous circumstance is that while the defense sector, the intelligence side, is continuing to pull along the development of these machines with a clear use case that everybody is concerned about, we're finally getting access to machines in the intermediate time that are smaller, that aren't quite ready to do this. They can't do it. It's not ready for that. But now that we have access to those machines, we don't have to try to write use cases with pen and paper. We write use cases with quantum computers. It's a real transformation, and it's just like when the Commodore 64 started coming out in the 80s, and then the Apple IIe, and people at home could start writing computer code, and that led to this giant boom in the IT sector. The same thing is starting to happen now, and it may look like it based on the last discussion and then the composition of this panel, but it is worth giving IBM some very serious credit, because they put a quantum computer on the cloud in 2015 or 16, at a time when it was like tiny and it couldn't do anything, and frankly, it didn't work that well. But they got started. They've turned that into a whole cloud service that is reliable and has high uptime and allows companies like mine to develop infrastructure software that now makes it easy for everybody to get access to these machines and run useful workflows. That's what's driving the big use cases now.
And it's beautiful because democratization is so important when the world's population only has 20% of the world's population only has access to advanced compute. And so having leading firms like IBM put a quantum computer on the cloud so that any student around the globe with access to the internet can start running these use cases. It's really, really important for the field to have that democratization. So one of the other last myths that we wanted to bust before we went into kind of really the market focus for the investors in the room was the notion that to invest in quantum, it has to be with NVIDIA or IBM or the stock of those companies or any of the other big techs, but that's simply not true. So can we bust that myth?
Well, they can invest in IBM.
Of course.
No problem with that, right? So let me say that. No, but jokes aside, again, I'll let Michael start with that because I obviously have a bias to you.
We're all selling our own book, obviously. The field was driven for many years by academics and national labs. And then the early industry investment came from large organizations like IBM and Google that could invest in long-term research. And more recently, we've seen a change. Now, many of you will probably know that there was a wave of early quantum technology startups. Many of them have not panned out the way people had hoped. And frankly, that came because there was a very simplistic view of what we needed to do. Just you make an application and you make a computer and everything is going to sort itself out.
Everything will work.
And I think we kind of got the ordering wrong. But now that there are various platform vendors, AWS has Bracket, IBM has IBM Quantum Services, and then you get infrastructure software providers like Qcontrol that make this technology accessible to people with conventional IT skills instead of people who are quantum physicists like us. I think that is a big change. So the opportunities are, in my view, now emerging for new classes of investable companies that can actually show the value of the IP that they've developed over the last however long in research.
And then the last critical component of that supply chain is actually taking the product and applying it to the business case.
That's exactly where I was going to go. To pick up from Michael, yes, there are a lot of new areas, white space, where you can innovate to build up the capability. I think where I see this fanning out and applying at scale is on the application side, where I think human ingenuity is actually the only limit which will stop us from being, how much we can, innovate in this space, because there are a whole class of problems that are waiting to be solved once you have a reasonably, purposeful quantum computer, and that application is where I believe the investment is going to be. There are, there's research being done in battery technology.
Batteries, yep.
So,
right.
That's an area that one may find, innovative application. There are new materials yet to be discovered, because there is no way you can three-dimensionally model anything today because of the limitations of the classical computer, whereas you can't even visualize a coffee molecule. You may say, why is coffee? Well, I like coffee and I want to improve the quality of coffee. That being an independent thing. There are new materials that you can discover. There are new drugs you can discover. So the application of this question across the various industries is where I think we're going to see a whole lot of innovation pop up.
Well, we are genuinely using quantum mechanics to create a future that we don't know that exists today. So there's questions that we don't even know how to ask that quantum is going to be able to solve for. And that's what gets me excited every day to wake up and be in this space, is the cure for cancer, the cure for my son's rare disease, the cure for, how to get your coffee faster.
Yeah. Look, I think it is worth saying, quantum computing is not magic pudding, right?
Yeah.
It can't do everything and anything, and it doesn't just fix all problems. But there is a change that I was alluding to before. And the change is that for the first several years of industrialization of quantum computing, algorithms and applications were driven by people who specialized in a field called quantum information science, which is like quantum computer science. And that was because they were the people who had the expertise to write down with pen and paper what to do.
Go easy.
Right? And then what started to happen is customer pull. There's been a transformation where end users are identifying the problems that they want solved that are mathematically amenable to solutions on quantum computers, instead of theorists in computer science. I know I hope none of you are too offended, who are pushing potential applications. I think that transformation comes with accessibility of the technology.
Yeah. Yep, that's good. So let's shift away from the myths. We want the investors, the three things that they care about most: money, and then when am I going to get my money, right? So there is a lot of money to be made. There is a total accessible market here. We're feeling it. So what are you guys seeing?
Well, BCG says the opportunity is $850 billion by 2040. They recently upgraded to like 1.3 trillion by 2035 or something. This is the net market value, and it's because there are so many problems that in the long term, like the cryptography example that was given before, and in the near term, simply are underserviced by existing solutions. We see that there's a whole range of end-use applications that are now pulling. We see that there are new services and platforms that are coming online that obviously generate quite a lot of revenue. But because of the breadth of impact, that's why we're very bullish on the overall opportunity. It's why I've dedicated my entire professional career to this field.
To add to that, clearly there's a lot of money to be made, but there's also a lot of investments that need to be made in this space as well. And when we were chatting earlier, we talked about I think it was a McKinsey study that was published in 2022 that called out that the disparity in investment in quantum computing across some key countries. Just to put things in perspective, I think in 2019, there was a total of about $300 million of investment, whereas in 2022, that grew to $2.35 billion of investment. So there's significant growth in investment. At the same time, commitment from major countries towards quantum computing in terms of investment, China is at $15.3 billion. European Union is $7.2 billion. And the US, with its most recent increase, it was at 1.5. I think they added 1.8, so it's $3.3 billion. In other words, China is making as much as the rest of the world put together. I think that is something that we need to watch out for. I'm not just saying it because of the quantum safe kind of technologies, but earlier in a panel that was here where they were talking about India and the U.S. relationship, I think somebody made a point that in China, each province was competing against each other when it came to building electric vehicles and building technologies to support that. That's what propelled them to be one of the major contenders in the EV industry, right? We need something like that outside of China to happen in the rest of the world in the quantum computing space to propel that, and that will drive not just a lot more investment, but a lot more money to be made out of the innovation that comes out of that.
I mean, what's the thing that we decidedly have that China does not have? China has a big state apparatus. Yeah. They obviously have very smart scientists in the field, many of whom are educated in the West. They do not have you. They do not have the investor base committed on the private sector side to building commercial value out of this. And that's frankly what we need to leverage from a sovereign perspective in order to deliver some of the defense and intelligence applications.
Yeah, exactly. So how do we, I just shift a tiny bit, but still on this investor notion of where to invest. It's really about capturing the flag. So how do we capture the market? What kind of areas would we suggest the investors look into? Quantum safe is clearly one of them because it underpins everything that we do.
Yeah, it's I've been in this quantum safe business for the last 3.5, 4 years or so. And the first thing we did was to go look at, what's out there and what is needed for enterprises to really transform themselves, and how do we make it easy for them to accomplish that. So I don't want to look at this quantum safe as a problem statement that's going to break cryptography, but more on the other side of how do we ensure enterprises safeguard themselves now and in the future. That is a huge business. And there is not enough innovative approaches in companies. There are very few that are providing the automation, the tooling, the discovery. So there is so much work that is yet to be done that we are beginning to work. And we clearly cannot do all of that ourselves. Right? We need ecosystem partners. We need startups and companies that will fill up the void. And obviously, large companies don't move with the agility that a startup can, and we need that, right?
Right. And just last year, we were able to work together, and a major U.S. logistics company needed to secure their message system in each other. And so we were able to do that in a quantum safe way. Last week, the world saw an announcement around the iMessage getting some quantum secure. And these are examples of things that we can do now to start stepping forward there. So that is definitely market attrition and how we kind of drive forward. But
here's another now. Yeah. I mean, aside from the fact that we're now building this ecosystem on the platforms that the big vendors on the hardware side are developing, Q-Control is one of those. We have a commercial partnership with IBM in this area. There are other parallel verticals that we don't typically talk so much about. We say quantum computing, that is one vertical in the quantum technology
what about
sector.
Sensing, yeah?
Sensing is another. And now quantum sensing, which leverages the same kind of technology, but now to detect signals for defense and intelligence and geophysics and climate monitoring. This is great because the core technology is extremely similar. The core technology faces similar challenges, but the end use commercial applications are as clear as day.
That's right.
The customer pull is without doubt, and quantum advantage, the idea that you should choose a quantum solution, is already demonstrated. So this is an area where there's an opportunity for parallel investments that then mitigate some of the timing risk associated with when quantum computing is going to be accessible at an appropriate scale to achieve quantum advantage. That's why we operate in both sectors.
And I was in front of our board just recently, and I was giving the board this example, which I think is really, really relevant here for our audience. But you've got these big logistics companies that are sending a ship halfway around the world. It relies on GPS to do that. One can hack the GPS system.
Everybody write that down?
Yeah. And I can steer that ship off track, and I can damage all of the perishable goods on that ship, right? Or
it's happened. This is it's not a I can. This has happened.
3 months ago, this happened. And then 1.5 months ago, there was an airplane that flew over Iranian airspace because the pilots thought it was on a particular trajectory because its GPS was telling it was, but it was hacked. And so the absolute apparent use case here is what Mike was just talking about. We can put a quantum sensor onto that ship, onto that airplane, that it provides you an additional, not, it's not dependent on the GPS, and it allows you to have another gravitational component to identify where you are.
Yeah, so it's a GPS backup. It uses a couple of different signatures. Q-Control is one of the preferred providers under this AUKUS, Australia, UK, US, Pillar 2 technology sharing. So it's building quantum enhanced navigation systems. The idea is very simple. GPS is vulnerable.
That's
GPS
right.
is not always available. You need a backup. There's already an existing backup. Every surface vessel has a thing from Northrop Grumman called the WSN-7. It's inertial navigation. The quantum versions are just way better. Way better.
That's right.
That allow you to, instead of being able to navigate within a mile over 8 hours, navigate within a mile over 8 weeks. That's transformational in terms of what kind of security you have on logistics or defense applications.
And what I find very interesting is that's tangible, touchable, yet it's such an uninvested space that it baffles.
You're taking investment, thanks.
Yeah. All right, so I just want to, because AI is so popular and part of everything that we do, what role is quantum playing in that acceleration of AI, or vice versa?
I think one of the, we look at three different use cases three types of use cases that quantum typically applies. One is optimization. The other is, as we say, modeling, which I talked about. And the third is AI. And then there's a large class of problems that quantum can be applied to within the AI space that will accelerate it's a sparse matrix search problem, essentially, and pattern recognition. All these are clearly areas where quantum and AI intersect. And so when a quantum computer of sufficient scale and size becomes available where you can really apply AI models and begin solving it, you will see a step change, or step increase, I should say, in the accuracy of these models.
Yeah.
So there's two angles. One is what Ray was just talking about is quantum for AI.
Yeah.
Right? That's leveraging quantum computing in AI applications. The other version is AI for quantum, which is something that we've been a pioneer in. We use AI techniques, and I want to be very clear, we don't mean ChatGPT wrappers, we mean things that we build ourselves to manipulate the hardware in order to improve the performance of the devices at the infrastructure software layer. There's an increasing confluence of which math problems are being solved, which techniques can be leveraged across, and I think that is driving the development of quantum computing as much as quantum computing is likely in the future to drive the development of new AI techniques.
And I was actually going to end us with asking, what do you see most promising development in the next 5 years? But just playing off of what you just said, Mike, the three of us worked on that particular DNA sequencing use case together, IBM having a Fire Opal instance. And a year ago, when we were doing this problem, trying to solve for 3.2 billion base pairs is what's inside of one human genome. You cannot solve for that holistically in a classical computer. So in the quantum environment, we were getting stuck. And then when we were able to plug it in with IBM's Fire Opal instance, we were able to, one, solve the problem, which is really, really exciting. But two, we had IBM released their Osprey, which was a bigger quantum computer. So that gave us a solution, which was super exciting. But then pairing it through the Fire Opal technology, we were able to get 20x improvement just with that. So there's huge value in AI with quantum.
Totally. And I know we are out of time, but pharma, drug discovery, and you talked about DNA sequencing. In my view, those will have significant impact, or they'll yield significant impact in the next 5 years that we all can feel.
So I'll give you one to end that's a lot more speculative. quantum IoT, convergence of quantum sensors that keep data in the quantum domain instead of converting it into classical, quantum networking, which you'll hear about for distributing quantum coherent information, and then quantum computing. We know with actual proofs that enables extraordinary improvements in the efficiency of, say, model training for AI. That's a big ask. There's a lot of development that has to go in there, but that vision of this fully networked quantum technology space is extremely exciting.
Well, thank you, panelists,
right.
and I hope this gave you some excitement of where we are in the industry. Quantum is here now. We can make use of it. We really value your time, and thank you, Mike and Ray, for joining me today.
Thanks.
Enjoyed it. Thank you, guys.
Everybody.
Awesome, man.
Light the fuse, electrified. We can do it how we like. Whoa! Everybody, now here we go. Oh, oh, hey! Everybody, now here we go. Oh, 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 oh. Like a supersonic, you will love the way we're coming through. Whoa, oh, oh. No one's shooting for the sky, living young and running wild. That's just our style.